So, what if everything we thought we knew about genetics, about DNA being just this simple linear code, like a static blueprint passed down? What if that was just, well, scratching the surface?
Yeah, just the very beginning of the story.
Imagine for a moment if your genes were less like that fixed instruction manual and more like I don't know, a dynamic, vibrating orchestra, constantly interacting with unseen universal forces, maybe even responding to your thoughts, your emotions.
That's a really powerful analogy, actually. It captures the essence of what we're exploring today.
Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take these complex, sometimes pretty out there ideas and really try to unpack them for you, the curious learner.
Our goal isn't just to explain, but to connect the dots,
Yeah.
hopefully leading to some of those aha moments.
Exactly. Without the dense jargon or, that dry academic feel, today we're plunging into something genuinely revolutionary. It's a framework that proposes a radical reimagining of how we understand life, health, the whole universe, really.
It's called the Ontology of Metagenetics.
Right. And this isn't just about, tweaking existing genetic theories. It's presented as a complete shift in perspective. It invites us to see ourselves not just as biological machines, but maybe as active participants in this huge, interconnected cosmic dance.
And the source material for this deep dive is quite significant. It's a paper titled Ontology of Metagenetics by Philip Randolph Lillian. And it's not just adding a footnote to biology. It really aims to lay out a comprehensive new science. It's proposing a shift that's genuinely paradigm-altering in its scope.
So our goal today, our mission, is to explore how this metagenetics framework suggests a complete departure from the gene-centric view, that reductionist perspective that's really dominated biology for so long.
Right. Instead, it champions a holistic, field-based understanding of genetics, thinking in terms of fields, not just particles or sequences.
Get ready for some potentially serious revelations. We're going to try and connect the smallest genetic processes happening inside your cells right now to maybe the grandest cosmic patterns out there.
You'll discover not just what this new science proposes, but hopefully why it could matter profoundly to you, to your health, and maybe even to our collective understanding of existence and our place within it all.
All right, let's dive straight in then. The term itself, Ontology of Metagenetics. It sounds incredibly complex. My first thought is, okay, how is this different from something like epigenetics? A lot of listeners might know that term, how genes get switched on or off, right?
Mm-hmm. Influenced by environment.
Yeah. How does metagenetics push us beyond even that, beyond our current advanced understanding of the double helix? What is it, really?
That's a great place to start, actually. Because while epigenetics explores how gene expression can be modified without changing the DNA sequence itself, like you said, turning genes on or off based on environmental cues, diet, stress, that kind of thing, metagenetics goes, well, much, much deeper.
Deeper how?
It's proposed as the study of genetic systems as holistic, interconnected frameworks. And these frameworks operate across different dimensions, not just the microcosmic, your molecules, your cells, but also the macrocosmic. We're talking cosmic scales.
Cosmic scales, like stars and planets influencing my DNA.
Potentially, yes. That's part of the framework. And it even extends into what the paper calls metaphysical dimensions. So it's a huge scope.
Okay, wow. That's a lot broader than just molecules.
Definitely. The core distinction here is that traditional genetics, even when we include epigenetics, still largely views genes as discrete units of heredity, almost like individual words in a static book, right? Instructions.
Yeah, A, T, C, G, the letters.
Exactly. Metagenetics, on the other hand, views genetic fields, notice the shift from gene to field, as dynamic coherent systems. And these systems are constantly integrating information across vast, almost unimaginable scales.
So less like isolated words, more like resonant fields.
Precisely. Imagine your genes not as isolated switches, but, going back to your earlier analogy, like a self-tuning orchestra, where every single instrument, every vibration affects the entire symphony.
Okay.
And this new framework introduces these key concepts: hologenic, and coherogenic dynamics. These suggest a far more layered, interactive, and frankly responsive reality for your genes than we've previously conceived. It's suggesting your genes are listening and responding constantly.
So, okay, if I'm following, epigenetics is like the conductor telling the violin section, okay, play softer here or louder there. But metagenetics is saying there's this whole universal score, this fundamental musical structure, and maybe even a resonant field that shapes the entire symphony, influencing how the conductor even thinks, not just the individual notes being played.
That's a brilliant way to put it. Yes, it implies a deeper layer of organization and influence. And the implications for you personally are profound.
How so?
Well, this isn't just some abstract academic debate tucked away in a lab. This fundamental shift could potentially redefine how we approach medicine, how we understand evolution itself, and maybe even our very place in the universe.
Right. It challenges that whole idea.
Exactly. It challenges that deeply ingrained idea that you are merely the sum of your individual genes, or that your biological fate is solely determined by some fixed genetic code you inherited.
Which is kind of the standard view, isn't it? You get dealt a genetic hand, and that's that.
Pretty much. But metagenetics suggests a far more dynamic and interconnected picture, one where your genetic makeup is constantly influenced by and also influences forces far beyond just the cellular level.
So things like my stress levels, what I eat, my emotional state, they aren't just external factors.
According to this framework, no. They can be seen as direct conductors influencing the harmony or the lack of harmony, the disharmony of your entire genetic symphony, that persistent fatigue you might feel, or that sudden burst of energy. Maybe it's your genetic orchestra signaling a shift in its internal rhythm, its coherence.
That's a completely different way of thinking about health and disease. Not just broken parts, but a system losing its rhythm. Hashtag 1.2, the profound questions metagenetics asks.
Okay, this is where, for me, the framework truly starts to unfold in these really profound ways.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about providing new answers to the old questions we've been asking in genetics. It seems like it's asking entirely new, deeply fundamental questions. Questions that traditional genetics, maybe because of its focus, often doesn't even touch upon.
That's a key aspect. It definitely broadens the scope of what we even consider a valid genetic inquiry. The foundational questions laid out in the paper are genuinely thought-provoking. They really push the boundaries of what science typically explores.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, for instance, metagenetics asks, how does genetic information actually exist in a truly holographic form? And this isn't just meant as a loose metaphor.
Not just an analogy.
No, the framework proposes it quite literally. It implies that the whole of your genetic information might actually be contained within every part, like a fragment of a hologram still holding the entire image. Wow.
Which, if true, would allow for remarkable redundancy and error correction. Think about it. If a piece of a hologram gets broken off, you can still see the whole picture in that tiny piece, right?
Yeah, just maybe fuzzier.
Exactly. So this suggests your genes might operate with a similar kind of resilience. It implies they could be incredibly robust against damage or mutation, because the blueprint is everywhere, not just in one spot.
That's fascinating. So if, say, one part of my body experiences a major shock, like an injury or inflammation, the impact isn't just limited to that area. My entire genetic system instantly feels it or knows about it.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
It could offer an explanation for things like widespread systemic inflammation following a localized injury, or even how a significant emotional trauma can manifest physically across seemingly unrelated parts of your body, as if the whole system registered the event holographically.
Okay, that's one huge question. What else?
Another crucial question it tackles is, in what ways do quantum fields and something called scalar fields influence genetic coherence and adaptability?
Quantum fields. Okay, I've heard of quantum biology. But scalar fields, what are those?
Scalar fields are proposed fields that extend beyond our classical understanding of space and time. They're thought to be non-local, potentially carrying information instantaneously across distances. So this question opens up a whole new realm of subtle, yet potentially powerful interactions.
Suggesting what?
Yeah.
Non-local connections affecting my biology.
Exactly. Instantaneous influences across vast distances, potentially affecting your very genetic coherence, your biological stability. It's a concept that definitely challenges conventional physics as applied to biology.
Mind-bending stuff. And you mentioned evolution earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then there's the question of evolution itself. Metagenetics asks, how does biological evolution emerge not just from purely random mutation and selection, the sort of standard Darwinian view, but perhaps from universal coherence principles?
Meaning less random, more guided.
It suggests a potentially more directed, maybe even intelligent, in the sense of inherent order and purposeful process underpinning the incredible diversity and complexity of life we see on Earth. It frames evolution less like a blind random walk and more like an inherent drive within the universe towards higher order, complexity, and coherence.
Okay, that's a fundamental challenge to evolutionary biology. And what about us? Our minds, our awareness, does it go there?
It absolutely does. And perhaps this is the most intriguing question for us as conscious beings. What role does the observer function, maybe even your own consciousness, your attention, your intention play in shaping genetic dynamics?
Whoa. So my thoughts could literally influence my genes.
That's what the framework explicitly explores.
Mm.
It pushes the boundaries of conventional science, suggesting a potential direct link between mind and genetic expression. It implies that your beliefs, your intentions, your state of consciousness might literally help shape your biology at a fundamental level.
That has massive implications for things like the placebo effect or mind-body medicine.
Huge implications. And finally, metagenetics asks, how do microcosmic genetic processes, the stuff happening inside your cells right now, reflect macrocosmic patterns found throughout the universe? Things like the structure of galaxies, star formations, spiral patterns in nature.
That as above, so below idea again.
Exactly. It points towards a deep, underlying fractal and holographic unity across all scales of existence. It suggests that the fundamental patterns of the cosmos are mirrored somehow within your own genetic makeup.
These questions, they're truly transformative, aren't they? They fundamentally change the narrative about life itself. For me, they open up these incredibly exciting possibilities for understanding my own body's amazing ability to heal itself, its resilience, and even consciousness itself in ways I just haven't considered scientifically before. It really reframes our biological existence as something far more profound, interconnected, and maybe even purposeful than just, complex chemistry.
It certainly invites a much grander view.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this new, expansive view of genetics, we need to understand the new players. You mentioned these terms. Hologenic, hologenic, coherogenic. It sounds like a new cast of characters in the genetic story.
That's a good way to think about it. And what's fascinating, according to the paper, is that these players are structured hierarchically. They build upon each other, showing a flow of information.
Like levels of organization.
Exactly. It's presented almost like a cosmic blueprint being translated, layer by layer, into the living, breathing reality within your very cells. It suggests a very elegant, structured system.
Okay, break it down for us. What are these levels? Where does it start?
It starts at the most fundamental, the most universal level. The paper defines 4 core concepts, structured from this foundational layer down to the observable gene we all know.
Right.
At the very top, the absolute foundation is the hologene. This is described as the invariant holographic blueprint of genetic coherence.
Invariant, meaning it doesn't change.
Exactly. It's the unchanging, perfect template. It encodes the systemic order across all biological scales, representing the universal principles of genetic organization. Think of the hologene as like the master architectural vision for all life, a fundamental, perfect pattern that always exists, underlying everything, regardless of how it manifests physically.
Like a platonic form for genetics.
That's a very apt comparison, actually, yes. It's proposed as the ultimate source of all biological order and stability, a kind of cosmic DNA that provides the foundational, perfect instructions.
Okay, so the hologene is this ultimate master plan, the perfect blueprint. But how does it actually do anything? How does that abstract template translate into, making proteins and building cells in my body right now?
That's where the next layer comes in. Flowing directly from the hologene, bridging the gap between the abstract and the active, we have the hologene.
The hologene. Okay.
This is defined as the dynamic, field-based instructional layer. Its job is to translate that hologenic blueprint into dynamic biological activity.
Yeah.
It operates as the medium connecting the invariant hologene level down to the next layer, the relational coherogene layer.
So if the hologene is the architect's grand vision,
then the hologene is like the detailed dynamic software program that interprets and runs that vision. It's the real-time operating system for your genetics, guiding all the biological processes, making sure everything is happening according to the blueprint, but also adapting fluidly to the change conditions within your body and its environment. It's the active informational field.
so it's like the hologene sets the rules of the game, and the hologene is the active player making moves based on those rules in the current state of play.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yes.
Now, next in the hierarchy, mediating between the hologene's field instructions and the actual genes, is the coherogene.
Coherogene. Okay, this sounds important.
It is. This is described as a network of interdependent genes that function together as a unified system. Their collective job is to maintain coherence and adaptability within a specific biological process or pathway. The coherogene acts as the bridge between the abstract field instructions coming from the hologene and the physical genes we're more familiar with.
Right, so this is where the actual DNA sequences we know come into play.
Exactly. But crucially, not as isolated units doing their own thing. The coherogene is conceptualized as a highly organized team of genes working together cohesively like a functional module, to achieve a shared biological goal.
Like a biochemical pathway, maybe?
Sort of, but with an emphasis on their unified, coherent function as guided by the hologene. They are constantly communicating, coordinating, and adapting their collective activity to serve the broader systemic purpose defined by the higher levels. It's less about one gene doing one specific thing, and much more about a symphony of genes working in tight harmony to keep you healthy and functional.
Okay, but hang on. How is a coherogene really different from a gene network or a pathway that biologists already talk about? We know genes work together.
That's a fair question. The key difference proposed here lies in the level of organization and, crucially, the source of the coherence. Traditional gene networks describe the physical interactions and biochemical regulatory pathways between genes. Gene A affects gene B, which affects gene C.
Right, the biochemical cascade.
Yes. The coherogene, however, explicitly describes these genes functioning as a unified system that is actively organized and guided by those higher-order hologenic field dynamics, which themselves derive their instructions from the invariant hologen. It emphasizes an inherent drive towards systemic coherence, orchestrated from above, not just the sum of individual biochemical interactions bubbling up from below.
So it's adding this top-down organizational principle from the field level.
Precisely. And then finally, at the most accessible, observable level, the level we typically study in genetics, we have the gene.
Ah, familiar territory.
All right, this is described as the derived, almost particle-like expression of genetic function. But importantly, its structure and function are seen as being organized by those higher field interactions. This is the gene, as we traditionally understand it, a specific sequence of DNA, often coding for a protein or regulating other genes.
So the gene itself isn't the starting point.
In this model, no. The individual gene, as a unit of heredity, is seen as the observable output, the endpoint, or the physical manifestation of the hologene, and coherogene interactions playing out. It's like that single, perfectly played note within the grand symphony we talked about, essential, yes. But its performance is guided by the score, the hologene, the conductor's interpretation, the hologene, and the coordinated efforts of the entire orchestra section, the coherogene.
So it's not just a chaotic process of genes bumping into each other, but a highly orchestrated hierarchical flow of information from the universal down to the specific.
That's the core idea. The framework emphasizes that information originates in the hologene, flows through the hologene as dynamic field instructions, is organized into functional units by the coherogene, and is ultimately executed by the gene.
This unified hierarchical flow, it suggests an incredible inherent efficiency and interconnectedness. It implies my genetic makeup isn't just a random collection of instructions I inherited or some predetermined fate locked in code.
Exactly. Instead, it's presented as a deeply integrated, perhaps even intelligent system where every part is dynamically connected to the whole. A system that is constantly seeking balance, order, and optimal function. It really moves us beyond a purely mechanistic clockwork view of our biology towards something much more alive and responsive.
That's a profound shift in how I might perceive myself, my body, and my health. Not just a machine, but an active, coherent system. What I find so compelling and maybe a bit challenging about metagenetics is that it really doesn't seem shy about asking these, well, uncomfortable questions, scientifically speaking. It pushes way beyond the boundaries most scientists tend to stay within.
It definitely crosses disciplinary lines.
Yeah, it brings together fields that have traditionally been kept very separate. Physics, biology, information theory, maybe even philosophy. And that leads to some truly surprising, maybe even controversial connections. It suggests that if we really want to understand genetics, we can't just stay in the biology box. We might need to put on, like, quantum physics glasses sometimes.
Precisely. The scope of metagenetics, as laid out in the paper, is vast. It encompasses several distinct but interconnected subfields, each shedding light on a different facet of this holistic, field-based view. We probably can't cover every single one in detail, but let's highlight some that really open up new ways of thinking, the ones that illustrate just how broad this framework aims to be.
Okay, hit me with some examples.
All right, first let's consider hologenic field dynamics. This subfield dives deep into how those hologenes we talked about, the dynamic software layer, actually work. It investigates how they might act as, get this, bioacoustic envelopes.
Bioacoustic, like sound-based.
Yes, sound and vibration. Organizing genetic activity and, crucially, integrating the information from the hologene blueprint with real-time environmental factors. It studies holographic wave dynamics in genetic systems, examining how cues from your environment, food, toxins, stress, maybe even sounds, are integrated directly into gene expression via these fields.
So my entire genetic system is like a dynamic, constantly shifting holographic projection, changing its pattern based on everything happening around and inside me.
That's the idea. Receiving and responding to its environment in real time, changing its light and shadow, its vibrational pattern in response to every subtle input. It's a constant responsive dance between your genes and the world.
Okay, that leads directly into the next one you mentioned.
Exactly. Closely related is bioacoustic metagenetics. This explores the fundamental role of sound waves and vibrations, what physicists call phonons in genetic processes. It's not just a minor effect. It posits that genetic systems fundamentally use coherent bioacoustic waves for communication and self-organization.
Our cells are using sound to talk to each other.
Potentially, yes. It suggests that DNA and other cellular structures actually generate these bioacoustic vectors, like tiny vibrational signals, to encode and transmit information. This suggests your DNA might not just be a silent chemical code sitting there.
But an active speaker and listener?
Precisely. Using intricate vibrations and sound frequencies for its internal communication and organization. Imagine a constant internal symphony, maybe operating at frequencies we can't even detect, guiding your biology, influencing everything from how proteins fold correctly, to how cells divide, to how tissues repair themselves.
Wow. So if our DNA is speaking through sound, that really opens up entirely new avenues for how external sounds or frequencies, music, environmental noise, therapeutic sound might influence us at a really deep level beyond just our ears processing them. That's a wild thought.
It absolutely is, and it connects to traditions that have used sound for healing for centuries. Then things get even stranger with quantum metagenetics.
Okay, the quantum realm.
Yeah.
Always fascinating.
This subfield examines quantum properties like coherence, entanglement, superposition, applying them directly within genetic systems. It explores how genetic fields might operate within quantum frameworks, potentially accessing what physics calls the zero-point vacuum field, a fundamental sea of energy.
And how would that help?
The idea is that quantum coherence, operating at this deep level, could be what underpins genetic stability and adaptability. Picture your genes, or perhaps the fields guiding them, potentially being entangled.
Entangled like.
Yeah.
Linked instantly regardless of distance.
Exactly. Entangled with other parts of your body, or maybe even with external influences, allowing for non-local, instantaneous communication and coordination. An immediate, unbroken connection across what seems like physical separation within you, and maybe even beyond you.
That could, in theory, explain how a sudden emotional shift like fear or joy can trigger an almost immediate physiological response throughout the entire body.
Yes, as if everything is fundamentally connected and communicating instantaneously at a quantum level.
Okay, my head is spinning slightly, but it gets even more non-local.
It does. Taking the idea of non-local influence even further, we delve into scalar metagenetics. This area studies how these proposed non-local scalar fields might link genetic systems to what the paper terms the zero-space vacuum potential.
Zero space vacuum potential. That sounds intense.
It refers to a postulated fundamental field potentiality, maybe underlying the zero-point field. The idea here is that these scalar fields facilitate communication and coherence across vast distances, essentially instantaneously. Scalar modulations, or waves, are believed to encode and transport genetic information non-locally, interacting with universal scalar fields.
So my genetic information isn't just influenced by local signals in my body, but potentially by an invisible, fundamental field of universal potential that permeates everything, transcending normal space and time.
That's the hypothesis. Think of it like a silent, invisible radio signal that your genes are constantly broadcasting and receiving, part of a universal network,
Yeah.
allowing for communication and influence not just within your body, but perhaps across vast cosmic distances. It's a truly mind-bending concept.
It really is. That our genetic blueprint could be influenced by, or even sending signals to, something like a universal background hum.
Wow. And then there's the more direct bridge to spirituality you mentioned earlier.
Yes, and this is perhaps the most audacious subfield outlined. Metaphysical metagenetics. This one doesn't shy away from directly bridging scientific concepts with spiritual perspectives.
How does it do that?
It explicitly positions the hologene, that invariant blueprint, as a potential scientific correlate or manifestation of what spiritual traditions might call the divine blueprint. It explores how genetic systems could embody the unity of microcosm and macrocosm, reflecting a universal intelligence or inherent order.
So this is where science explicitly meets the sacred in this framework.
Essentially, yes. It suggests a fundamental, potentially intelligent design embedded within the very fabric of your being, and indeed all life, It offers a framework for contemplating how universal consciousness or intelligence might directly inform and shape your genetic structure and function. It's a bold move to integrate these domains. Definitely bold. And are there others? You mentioned practical applications too.
Yes, briefly, there's also energetic metagenetics, looking at subtle energy fields like the human biofield or chakras and their interaction with genetics. Evolutionary metagenetics, which reframes evolution based on these field dynamics. And crucially, applied metagenetics, which focuses entirely on the practical applications that could emerge from all these theoretical understandings. Things like those coherence-based medical therapies we touched on, holographic genetic mapping for diagnostics, and even advancements in AI and synthetic biology inspired by these natural principles of coherence.
Okay, so these subfields, they really cover a vast territory, from the deepest quantum levels to the most encompassing spiritual ideas, and then back to concrete applications. They're clearly not just theoretical
Not
curiosities.
according to the paper.
If even a fraction of this holds true, it points towards a future where our medicine, our technology, maybe even our daily spiritual practices could be fundamentally transformed by this holistic, interconnected understanding of genetics. Imagine personalized medicine that actually tunes your energetic fields, or technologies that use specific sound frequencies to help repair genetic damage. It opens up truly revolutionary possibilities.
The potential, if validated, is certainly immense.
Okay, I have to admit, a lot of this sounds incredible. Energetic fields, universal blueprints, quantum entanglement in my DNA. It's fascinating. But a part of me, the skeptical part, is thinking, how does science actually grapple with these concepts? How do you measure a whole gene? How do you track a hologene field? It sounds very ethereal.
That's a completely valid question, and it's one the framework attempts to address directly. The beauty, or perhaps the ambition, of this ontology of metagenetics is it is presented not just as a philosophical or metaphorical model. It aims to be grounded in rigorous mathematical principles.
Ah, okay, so there's math behind the magic.
Exactly. The paper endeavors to formalize these concepts mathematically, emphasizing that even these seemingly abstract ideas can, in principle, eventually be quantified, modeled, and tested.
So it's trying to build a bridge from the abstract to the measurable.
Precisely. For example, the entire metagenetic system incorporating the hologene, coherogene, and gene is expressed through a core mathematical relationship. We don't need to get bogged down in the specific symbols or equations here.
Probably for the best.
Probably. But the key point is that it proposes a specific mathematical formula describing how these different layers, the universal blueprint, the dynamic instructions, the gene networks, all fundamentally interact through what it calls holographic field composition to produce the observable gene and its function as we understand it.
So it's not just a loose analogy like the orchestra, it's proposing an actual equation like EFMA, but for genetics.
Sort of, yes, a much more complex one, obviously, but it's striving for that level of formal description. It suggests that the relationships between these layers are quantifiable and follow specific mathematical rules.
Okay, what else? You mentioned the holographic idea.
Right. To describe the holographic nature of genetic information mathematically, the framework introduces the concept of a holographic genetic wave function.
A wave function, like in quantum mechanics.
Similar idea, yes. This mathematical function, often represented by the Greek letter psi, suggests your genetic information isn't just static data stored linearly, but behaves like a dynamic, multi-scale wave system. Think of it as a complex, maybe multi-dimensional interference pattern.
Like ripples on a pond, but way more complex.
Exactly. And crucially, like a physical hologram, the math suggests that information about the whole system is distributed throughout this wave pattern. Each part of the wave contains self-similar information about the whole, which is what allows for that remarkable resilience and distributed information storage we talked about.
So the math actually tries to capture that whole in every part idea.
It attempts to, yes. And then when considering the quantum aspects within genetic systems, things like coherence and entanglement, the framework uses established mathematical tools from quantum physics. For instance, it uses what's known as a density matrix, often denoted by rho, to describe and quantify states of genetic coherence.
A density matrix, what does it tell you?
It essentially allows for the quantification of how ordered or disordered, how coherent or decoherent the genetic system or its guiding field is. The paper even proposes using a measure called von Neumann entropy, S, to quantify this genetic coherence loss, or decoherence.
Entropy, like a measure of disorder.
Exactly. So the paper states that a higher value for this entropy S indicates a greater loss of coherence, which it explicitly terms a genetic catastrophe. Conversely, a lower value indicates high coherence, hologenic stability, and healthy genetic function.
So this gives a potential mathematical way to actually measure the health or order of your genetic system at this field level, like a quantifiable score for genetic harmony.
That's the implication, yes. A potential metric for genetic well-being, reflecting its overall coherence. And finally, when discussing how energy flows and interacts across these various genetic fields.
Right, the scalar fields and all of that.
Yes. The framework posits that these genetic fields follow specific types of wave interactions, potentially described by equations like the Klein-Gordon equation, which is used in physics to describe scalar fields. These equations aim to illustrate how genetic energy distributes and propagates across these dynamic, multi-layered fields, influencing your overall biological function. It's an attempt to mathematically model the flow of vital energy or information within the living system.
Okay. So while the actual math itself might be incredibly complex and probably way beyond most of us, including me, its very presence is significant.
I agree.
It means this framework isn't being presented as purely speculative or just metaphorical hand-waving. It's being put forward as a bold scientific hypothesis, one with mathematical underpinnings that, at least in principle, offer pathways for empirical testing and validation down the line.
Right. It represents a serious attempt, whether it ultimately proves correct or not, to bridge these abstract, holistic concepts with tangible, measurable scientific inquiry. It's pushing the boundaries of what we can, or perhaps should try to, rigorously investigate in biology.
That formal structure, that mathematical language, is a crucial differentiator from just, philosophical musings. It gives it scientific teeth, even if the testing is still a major challenge.
Precisely. It invites rigorous examination, not just belief or dismissal.
Okay, let's talk about order and disorder. We all kind of intuitively know what a catastrophe is, right? A sudden disaster, a collapse, maybe a computer crash, a sudden illness diagnosis, a bridge falling down, or a relationship ending abruptly. It feels like a sudden break.
A disruption of the expected order.
Exactly. But metagenetics, according to the paper, gives us a very precise and maybe surprisingly unifying definition that ties all these seemingly disparate events together. It defines a catastrophe in this specific context as the sudden loss of coherence resulting in genetic or systemic dysfunction.
That's right. It's framing catastrophe fundamentally as a breakdown of coherent order within any kind of system.
Any system, not
Oh.
just biological.
No, that's what's remarkable. The paper argues this concept applies across all scales of existence, from the tiniest quantum particles right up to the grandest cosmic events. It provides compelling examples of this sudden loss of coherence at different levels.
Okay, let's hear some. Start small.
All right. At the microscopic scale, we see phenomena like quantum decoherence. We mentioned this briefly. It's when quantum systems lose their delicate, coherent superposition, their ability to be in multiple states at once, usually due to interaction with their environment. Think about the famous Schrodinger's cat thought experiment. The collapse of the quantum state from a superposition of alive and dead to a definite state, once observed, is in a way a microscopic coherence catastrophe.
Okay, the quantum fuzziness disappears.
Exactly. More relevant biologically, consider protein misfolding. When a protein loses its precise, complex, folded structure, its structural coherence, it can't function properly. This misfolding is implicated in devastating diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and prion diseases. It's a catastrophic loss of function at the molecular level due to lost coherence.
That makes sense. A breakdown in the structure leads to breakdown in function.
Right. And even basic chemical reactions can be viewed through this lens. When molecules react, existing chemical bonds break atoms, and molecules lose their prior coherent bonding arrangement, which involves a release or absorption of energy as coherence shifts.
Okay, so that's the tiny scale. What about bigger systems?
Moving up to intermediate scales, the paper points to things like neural network failures in the brain. During epileptic seizures or strokes, for instance, there's a catastrophic loss of synchronized firing patterns, a loss of functional connectivity across brain regions. The coherent communication breaks down, disrupting thought, movement, and consciousness.
Like static overwhelming the signal.
A good analogy. Or think about structural integrity failures in engineering, the sudden catastrophic collapses of bridges, buildings, or dams. These happen when the material coherence, the way the components hold together under stress, is compromised beyond a critical point. The very integrity, the coherent structure, breaks down.
Okay, bridges, brains. What about really big stuff? Cosmic scale.
Yes, even on the macro scale, the concept applies vividly. Consider supernovae. A massive star's catastrophic collapse at the end of its life involves a dramatic loss of stability, a symmetry reduction, releasing an unbelievable amount of energy as its gravitational and nuclear coherence is entirely lost. It literally blows itself apart.
A stellar catastrophe.
Exactly. Closer to home. Think about ecosystem collapse. When sudden environmental changes occur like rapid deforestation, ocean acidification, or the introduction of an invasive species, it can lead to a cascading loss of ecological coherence. Key relationships break down, populations crash, and the entire ecosystem can destabilize rapidly.
Like losing key players in that orchestra.
Precisely. And the paper even applies it to human systems, like economic crises. Think about the 2008 global financial crisis. It's described here as financial markets losing coherence during widespread panic. Trust evaporated, credit froze, established relationships broke down, a systemic breakdown of economic order and confidence.
Wow. Seeing all these things, protein folding, seizures, bridge collapses, supernovae, ecosystem failures, market crashes through this single lens of loss of coherence is actually really powerful.
It is. This unified definition helps us understand seemingly unrelated events as potential manifestations of the same underlying principle, a fundamental breakdown in coherent order. It offers a potentially powerful new framework for diagnosis, for understanding risk, and maybe even for prevention across incredibly diverse systems.
It reframes dysfunction not as just a unique problem in each case, but as a universal pattern of discoherence, a loss of harmony. That's a significant shift in perspective. Okay, so if catastrophe is the sudden, often devastating loss of coherence and order, then coherogenesis must be its flip side, right? The opposite.
Exactly. It's the profound and in many ways beautiful opposite. The sudden emergence or the restoration of coherence within a system.
So it's like the universe hitting the reset button, or maybe hitting the organize button, bringing things back into harmony after chaos.
That's an excellent way to put it. Coherogenesis is defined in the paper as the process where previously disparate, disordered, or asymmetrical elements spontaneously unify to achieve a higher order organization or harmony.
A coming together.
Yes. It represents a process where an underlying potential for symmetry, resonance, and coherence actualizes into a unified functional state. Think of it like a scrambled radio signal suddenly locking onto the station, becoming clear and strong. Or maybe like a fragmented puzzle that seems impossible to solve, suddenly snapping together into a clear, unified picture, as if guided by an invisible hand or an underlying pattern reasserting itself.
That feeling when something just clicks into place?
Precisely that feeling, but applied to physical, biological, or even informational systems. The paper even provides a mathematical description for this process, outlining how coherogenic stability, represented by C, might be restored over time.
More math.
Just briefly. The equation suggests that coherence naturally decays, like losing signal, but can be actively restored through resonance-driven processes, like tuning the radio. It also posits a critical coherogenic threshold.
A tipping point.
Exactly. If a system drops below a certain level of coherence, a catastrophic loss occurs. And interestingly, the model suggests that sometimes to get back above that threshold, the system might require an external nudge or stimulation, perhaps drawing energy or information from its foundational hologenic blueprint to reestablish order.
Like needing a jump start to get the coherence going again. Can you give us a more concrete, real-world example of coherogenesis? Something less abstract than, say, galactic stabilization, more relatable.
Absolutely. Think about some of the incredible stories we occasionally hear about spontaneous remission or healing, where someone's body suddenly recovers from a severe, long-standing illness, seemingly against all medical odds.
Yeah, those are amazing stories.
From a metagenetics perspective, this wouldn't just be dismissed as luck or an anomaly. It could be understood as a profound, sudden coherogenesis event happening within the biological system. The system, perhaps aided by a significant shift in environment, diet, stress levels, or maybe even belief or consciousness, somehow manages to realign with its underlying hologenic blueprint. It finds its rhythm again, restoring the lost genetic and systemic coherence.
So the body remembers its perfect state and snaps back to it.
That's the essence of the idea. And this powerful concept has potential applications across scales, just like catastrophe.
Okay, like what?
At the microscopic level, it helps explain phenomena studied in physics labs, like the recoherence of quantum systems after decoherence, or processes like quantum entanglement stabilization. In biological systems, beyond spontaneous healing, it supports our understanding of regeneration. Think of a salamander regrowing a lost limb. That's a stunning example of restoring the original blueprint, a massive act of coherogenesis.
Right, rebuilding complex structures perfectly.
Exactly. For technological systems, coherogenesis provides the conceptual foundation for what the paper terms coherence engines. These are hypothetical devices designed to actively induce coherogenesis to reverse symmetry breaking events and restore coherence in physical, informational, or quantum systems. Imagine technology that could actively restore order in failing systems.
That sounds like science fiction, but based on this principle.
It's definitely forward-looking. And even at the cosmological scale, the principle might apply to large-scale phenomena like the stabilization of galaxies after periods of turbulence, or the fundamental processes that allowed cosmic order to emerge from the apparent chaos after the Big Bang.
This concept of coherogenesis, it really offers a radically new understanding of healing, regeneration, and the inherent resilience of life, doesn't it?
I think it does.
It suggests that systems, including your own body, possess this deep, innate drive to restore order and harmony, even after significant disruption or catastrophe. And perhaps more importantly, it implies that we might one day be able to actively assist this natural process, develop therapies or technologies that intentionally trigger coherogenesis in systems that have lost their way, potentially ushering in an era of true regenerative medicine based on restoring fundamental coherence.
That's certainly the hope and the potential driving this line of inquiry.
Okay, we've circled back to this holographic nature of the hologene a few times now, the idea that the whole blueprint is in every part. But let's dig into that a bit more. What does that really mean for my genetic information day to day, or especially when things go wrong, like illness or injury? How does being like a hologram make my genes more resilient, more capable of repair?
That's a crucial point, because it gets to the heart of why this concept is proposed as being so important for biological function. The hologene, as that invariant foundational level of genetic coherence, is described as encapsulating the entire genetic system's information, but in a distributed holographic manner.
Distributed, meaning not stored in just one place.
Exactly. This is a fundamental departure from the traditional idea, where specific information is thought to be stored in specific localized sections of the DNA sequence. The gene for eye color is here, the gene for insulin is there. In that model, if you damage that specific spot, you lose that specific information.
Right. Cut out that page, the story changes.
Precisely. But the holographic model suggests something different. What this distributed storage means in practice, according to the paper, is that even if specific genes or regions of your DNA get damaged, mutated, or disrupted, maybe by environmental toxins, radiation, or just random cellular errors during replication, the system as a whole retains the capacity to resolve that disruption.
If the part is damaged.
Because it can reference the holistic pattern, the complete blueprint, that's encoded holographically throughout the entire hologene field. It's almost like having a complete, perfect backup copy of the entire genetic library accessible from any point within the system. So even if a specific physical page, a gene, gets torn or smudged, the whole story, the original coherent pattern, is still accessible, ready to be referenced for reconstruction or repair.
So the information isn't truly lost, just obscured locally?
That's the idea. This inherent holographic nature is proposed as the key to error correction. It naturally enables the system to restore coherence when mutations or damage occur. The paper suggests this could provide a deeper explanation for well-known biological phenomena that seem geared towards resilience.
Like what?
Like, for example, the extensive redundancy we see in the DNA code itself, multiple codons often coding for the same amino acid, or the presence of large amounts of so-called junk DNA, which might actually play a role in maintaining this holographic field integrity. These could be mechanisms for preserving information holographically, ensuring the message gets through even with noise.
So redundancy isn't just sloppy design, it's a feature for holographic stability.
Potentially, yes. And it also provides a powerful lens to understand the remarkable efficacy of epigenetic repair mechanisms. These mechanisms don't change the underlying DNA sequence itself, but they work to reestablish the proper gene expression patterns after disruption. How do they know what the proper pattern is? Metagenetics suggests they might be referencing and realigning the system with that underlying perfect hologenic blueprint.
So instead of just having a backup copy on a separate disk, it's more like the system can inherently reform or regenerate the missing or corrupted information from any surviving fragment of the pattern, much like reconstructing the image from a piece of a hologram. That's really remarkable if true.
It is a remarkable concept. And the implications for genetic therapy stemming from this are potentially revolutionary. If we could truly understand and learn how to interact with this holographic field.
We could move beyond just cutting and pasting genes.
Exactly. Future therapies might focus less on editing the physical DNA sequence and more on activating or aligning this underlying holographic blueprint to dynamically repair or adapt the entire system. Instead of targeting just one faulty gene, perhaps we could learn to stimulate the entire genetic field to self-correct mutational damage by helping it reestablish its original coherent pattern, almost like gently coaxing the system back into its perfect, harmonious state.
This concept provides a potentially profound scientific explanation for our body's incredible and often underestimated capacity for self-repair and resilience, even when faced with significant damage or disease. It opens up these revolutionary possibilities for future therapies that work with the body's innate intelligence, activating your inherent healing capabilities, rather than just fighting symptoms or replacing parts.
It shifts the focus from fixing the mechanism to restoring the coherence of the field that organizes the mechanism.
Okay, now we're heading into what feels like the deepest water yet. This is where the framework gets truly profound, stretching beyond the usual boundaries of biology and physics, right into the realms of philosophy and even, well, spirituality. It ventures into territory that might make some scientists uncomfortable, but you can't deny it's compelling in its sheer ambition to unify these domains. How does the paper actually navigate this delicate bridge between rigorous scientific inquiry and these deeper, often more subjective spiritual concepts?
It's definitely the most controversial aspect for mainstream science, but what's fascinating is how it's presented. The hologene, described through the lens of physics and information theory as the invariant and holographic essence of genetic systems, is shown to naturally align with certain universal spiritual concepts that have existed across cultures for millennia. It doesn't necessarily claim they are identical, but it points out the striking parallels, offering a potential bridge, a way to maybe integrate these seemingly disparate ways of knowing without abandoning scientific language.
So it's finding echoes or correspondence.
Exactly. For instance, the paper explicitly discusses the hologene as a potential scientific correlate for the concept of the divine blueprint. As the unchanging, fundamental, perfect template underlying all life, the hologene mirrors this ancient idea of a universal divine blueprint, a perfect eternal form or pattern that manifests imperfectly in the physical world. This blueprint is posited, remember, to exist at an invariant level of reality, containing the totality of information needed to organize, adapt, and restore any genetic system back to its ideal state.
Okay, I can see the parallel with ideas of a perfect form. Are there other specific connections?
Yes, the paper notes several spiritual parallels. We already mentioned the resonance with Platonic forms as perfect eternal archetypes from philosophy. It also aligns conceptually with the idea of the Akashic records, often described in esoteric traditions as a kind of holographic cosmic library, holding all information past, present, and future accessible through heightened states of consciousness. The hologene is like the biological chapter in that library.
The living record.
Precisely. And the concept of sacred geometry, which posits that certain fundamental geometric patterns and ratios encode the very structure of life and the universe, finds a potential scientific echo here in the underlying mathematical order and symmetry proposed for the hologene.
That idea of holography and oneness you mentioned seems particularly powerful here. How does that link to spiritual ideas?
It's a key bridge. The holography and oneness principle inherent in the hologene concept is presented as a direct parallel to the core spiritual principle of oneness or non-duality found in many mystical traditions.
How so?
The holographic nature, where the whole is present in every part, mirrors the spiritual understanding that all things are fundamentally interconnected, that individuality is not ultimate separation, but rather a unique expression of a greater unified consciousness or underlying reality. Just as any fragment of a hologram contains the potential for the entire image, each individual life form in this view is seen as an expression of the universal blueprint, fundamentally connected to everything else. Your individual hologene is a reflection of the universal hologene.
That's a profound connection. And what about healing?
This connection has potentially profound implications for understanding healing and spiritual insights. Healing, viewed through this combined lens, is seen not just as a physical or biochemical process, but as a fundamental realigning with the hologene, with that divine blueprint, to restore coherence and harmony.
So practices like meditation.
Exactly. This framework suggests that practices like deep meditation, focused prayer, chanting, sound therapy, or other consciousness-altering techniques might actually work, in part, by stimulating the genetic field to resonate more strongly with its underlying holographic blueprint.
Right.
They might help the system remember its perfect state and initiate coherogenesis, the restoration of coherence. In this light, coherogenesis becomes not just a biophysical process, but a form of profound spiritual renewal, a return to innate wholeness.
Wow. And evolution, does it touch on that spiritually?
Yes, briefly. In terms of evolution and spiritual growth, the hologene is seen as containing the inherent potential for both biological and spiritual evolution. Growth, whether it's the increasing complexity of an organism over generations or the expansion of an individual's consciousness, is viewed as the progressive unfolding and manifestation of this inherent potential stored within the blueprint. It suggests an evolution towards greater levels of complexity, harmony, coherence, and awareness, guided by this underlying pattern.
This framework really does offer a compelling, maybe even necessary way to try and bridge our scientific understanding of life with deeper philosophical and spiritual insights. It suggests that life isn't merely mechanistic, nor just a series of random accidents.
But perhaps deeply interconnected with universal principles of order, coherence, and maybe even intelligence.
Yeah, it provides a potentially rigorous scientific lens through which to view your own profound interconnectedness with everything, your innate drive towards wholeness and health, and maybe even your potential for growth on multiple levels: biological, psychological, spiritual. It truly invites a deeper sense of reverence for the intricate, multi-layered design of life.
It definitely pushes us to think bigger about what genetics might entail.
Okay, so if the hologene really does contain this universal blueprint, and if it's holographic, then it implies this deep, fundamental connection. A link between the tiniest processes happening in my genes right now and the absolute vastness of the cosmos. It really brings that ancient Hermetic saying, as above, so below, right into the heart of modern biology. It's suggesting that the patterns we see out there in the grand universe, galaxies, stars, planets, are somehow mirrored, reflected right here within our very cells. Like our very being is a kind of cosmic echo.
Indeed. The paper explicitly elaborates on this profound microcosm-macrocosm connection, arguing it operates through the hologene. It's arguably one of the most exciting and far-reaching aspects of this entire framework, suggesting a fundamental unity to all existence across all scales.
How does it propose this connection works?
Several ways. First, through that principle of holographic unity. Because the hologene is holographic, the same fundamental principles of order and coherence that govern your genetic field at the microcosmic level within your DNA, your cells, your tissues are proposed to also operate at larger macrocosmic scales. They might impact or be reflected in phenomena like the formation and structure of galaxies, the organization of entire ecosystems, or maybe even the subtle flows of universal energy fields that physicists are starting to explore.
So the same rules apply everywhere, just scaled up or down.
That's the idea. Which leads to the concept of scale invariance, often associated with fractals. The framework suggests there's a fractal relationship where macrocosmic principles and patterns are mirrored self-similarly within microcosmic systems.
Like the branching pattern of a tree mirroring a river delta or even our own circulatory system.
Exactly. Or think about the iconic double helix structure of DNA itself, so fundamental to life as we know it. Its spiral form echoes the spiral patterns we see in galaxies, in hurricanes, in the shells of snails, in the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, and countless other natural phenomena. Metagenetics suggests this isn't just a coincidence or analogy.
But an actual expression of the same underlying hologenic principles of order and organization manifesting at different scales.
Precisely. It hints at a deep, universal mathematical and geometric language underlying all form and function. And beyond just structural patterns, this framework suggests a tangible biological resonance with cosmic principles.
Resonance, like my body is literally tuning into the cosmos.
In a way, yes. It proposes that external cosmic factors, things we usually think of as completely separate from biology, like gravitational fields from the sun and moon, solar flares ejecting charged particles, various forms of electromagnetic resonance, like the Schumann resonances in Earth's atmosphere, might interact directly with your hologene field.
Influencing my biological coherence, my health.
That's the hypothesis. Consider well-established phenomena like circadian rhythms, our internal body clocks regulating sleep, hormone release, metabolism, which are undeniably synchronized with the daily cycle of the sun. Or think about cellular processes influenced by lunar cycles, particularly evident in marine life but potentially affecting humans too. Metagenetics views these not just as passive responses, but as direct interactions, a constant dialogue between microcosmic, your body, and macrocosmic solar system hologenetic dynamics.
So it's not just sunlight affecting vitamin D, it's a deeper field interaction.
Potentially, yes, a resonance between your field and the field of the sun or moon. And the framework even gets specific enough to propose a bold cosmic influence equation.
An equation linking me to the stars. Seriously?
Seriously. Again, without getting lost in the symbols, the equation essentially suggests that factors like the mass m of large cosmic bodies like planets or stars and their distance from you directly affect the coherence of your genetic field, potentially mediated by constants like the gravitational constant g and the speed of light.
Wait, so the position of Jupiter could, according to this math, have a tiny but real effect on my genetic coherence. That sounds like, well, astrology almost.
It definitely treads close to territory traditionally associated with astrology, but the attempt here is to ground it in physics specifically, field interactions potentially related to gravity or other long-range forces. It's a scientific hypothesis, however unconventional, positing a measurable direct influence of large cosmic bodies on your internal genetic state. It implies that your genes are not isolated systems, but are constantly receiving and responding to subtle cosmic signals, engaged in a perpetual dance with the planets and stars.
Okay. Regardless of whether that specific equation holds up, the overall concept is profound. It massively expands your sense of self and your place in the universe.
Absolutely.
It suggests that my health, my personal evolution, even my day-to-day energy levels and well-being are not just isolated events happening inside my skin. Instead, they are intricately woven into this grand tapestry of cosmic forces, a constant dance of interaction and influence. It paints this incredible picture where we are all active parts of a universally coherent design, intrinsically connected to the largest structures and energies in the cosmos. It makes your existence feel, well, far grander and more interconnected than you might have ever imagined.
It definitely challenges a purely localized, earthbound view of biology.
Okay, this has been a fascinating journey through the theory, the concepts, the connections, from quantum fields to cosmic blueprints. But the crucial question always comes back to, so what? Does any of this lead to tangible, real-world applications? Or is it just an interesting but ultimately abstract philosophical discussion?
That's the critical next step, isn't it? And according to the paper outlining the ontology of metagenetics, this framework isn't just theoretical. It's proposed to have incredibly exciting, tangible, and potentially transformative practical implications across a wide range of fields, starting perhaps most fundamentally with how we might engineer life itself.
Synthetic biology. Okay, so designing new organisms or biological systems, how would metagenetics change that? Isn't it already about editing genes?
It is, but metagenetics suggests a radical shift in how we approach it. Current synthetic biology often focuses on editing or inserting isolated genes, like adding a gene for producing a specific chemical into bacteria. This framework proposes shifting the paradigm from editing these isolated components to designing holistic, field-based genetic systems.
Designing the whole system, not just the parts.
Exactly. For instance, thinking about coherent genetic systems. Instead of just piecing together genes that do useful things, you could use the hologene concept as a foundation. You'd aim to design artificial genomes, where the primary emphasis is on systemic functionality, stability, and adaptability, ensuring all the components work together in perfect harmony, guided by engineered hologenic fields.
So you'd be designing the software, the hologene, as much as the hardware, the DNA.
Precisely. This would involve creating synthetic hologenes specifically designed to guide the emergent behaviors of engineered genetic networks. You could ensure adaptive field dynamics that make the organism incredibly resilient. Imagine designing a crop plant that doesn't just resist one specific pest, but has an overall field coherence that makes it robust against a wide range of environmental stresses, naturally self-regulating its growth and defenses in almost any climate.
Okay, that sounds powerful. What else?
This also leads directly to the concept of programmable genetic networks. We could potentially develop synthetic coherogenes, those team-like networks of genes, to program highly specific and reliable intergene relationships. This would ensure that complex synthetic gene networks operate cohesively and predictably, even under dynamic real-world conditions.
Like programming a biological computer.
In a sense. Imagine engineering bacteria specifically for advanced environmental sensing and remediation. You could design coherogenes that coordinate multiple genetic subsystems. One senses pollutant A, another senses pollutant B. A third activates the breakdown pathway only when both A and B are present above a certain threshold. You'd be creating living, self-managing bioreactors that respond intelligently to complex environmental cues.
That's a leap beyond current capabilities.
It is. And critically, this framework emphasizes coherence-based error correction. Instead of just hoping mutations don't mess things up too badly, we could potentially use these coherence principles to design genetic systems that inherently self-correct when mutations or disruptions inevitably occur.
How would that work?
This might involve developing advanced gene editing systems, maybe even integrating CRISPR-based tools, but linking them directly to the logic of coherogenes. The system wouldn't just be designed to cut and paste DNA, but to actively monitor and maintain the overall genomic integrity and functional coherence by reestablishing the intended field pattern if damage occurs. This could lead to far more stable, reliable, and robust engineered organisms.
Wow. Imagine creating biological systems, whether for sustainable agriculture, producing new medicines, cleaning up pollution that are inherently robust, self-repairing, and can adapt seamlessly to changing conditions without constant human tinkering and intervention. That opens up truly incredible possibilities for more sustainable and resilient biotechnologies.
It shifts the focus from controlling parts to designing resilient wholes.
Okay, let's talk medicine. If even a fraction of this field-based, coherence-focused view of genetics holds true, the implications for how we treat disease seem absolutely transformative, game-changing, potentially.
I agree. The potential therapeutic implications are perhaps the most immediate and compelling aspect for many people.
Because it shifts our entire paradigm for healing, right? Moving us beyond just managing symptoms or targeting isolated genetic defects and towards addressing the root cause of systemic imbalance and disease, it sounds like it's about restoring the fundamental order, the harmony within the body.
That's precisely the profound therapeutic potential outlined. Instead of chasing individual symptoms or trying to fix one broken part after another, metagenetics aims to restore the fundamental coherence within the entire biological system.
How would that work in practice, say, for something like cancer?
Well, taking restoring coherence in disease systems as the goal, diseases like cancer, which are increasingly seen as complex system failures involving networks of genes losing their normal regulation, losing coherence, and falling into dysfunctional patterns of uncontrolled growth, could potentially be treated differently.
Oh.
Instead of just chemotherapy trying to kill the fast-growing cells, you might target the specific coherogenes involved.
Target the gene teams that went rogue.
Exactly. Develop therapies designed to restore the proper functional relationships between those genes. This means creating entirely new coherence therapies, maybe using specific frequencies, energy fields, or targeted molecules that would help realign those disrupted genetic networks, coaxing them back into their normal, healthy patterns to prevent uncontrolled cell growth. Or maybe to restore proper immune system balance in autoimmune diseases, where the body mistakenly attacks itself due to lost coherence.
Addressing the network failure, not just the resulting symptoms.
Precisely. This framework also opens up entirely new avenues for truly personalized medicine. Current personalized medicine often looks for specific single-gene mutations linked to disease risk or drug response.
Right, like BRCA genes for breast cancer risk.
Yes. Metagenetics suggests moving beyond that, towards therapies tailored by analyzing a patient's entire genetic field, assessing the dynamics of their specific hologene, hologene, and coherogene interactions to identify where the systemic disruptions and imbalances actually lie. This holistic assessment could allow for interventions that address the systemic problem, the root cause of the network dysfunction, rather than just patching up an isolated genetic issue. It could make treatments far more effective, targeted, and potentially less prone to side effects.
Tailoring treatment to the individual's unique field pattern.
Exactly. Furthermore, looking ahead, we could see advancements in epigenetic coherence modulation. Remember, epigenetics is about changes in gene expression without changing the DNA sequence. This framework suggests we could develop new drugs, or perhaps more likely, non-invasive therapies like focused sound or electromagnetic fields, designed to enhance or suppress specific hologenes.
The software controlling gene expression.
Yes. The goal would be to reestablish the proper field coherence that has been disrupted by environmental factors, lifestyle choices, chronic stress, or aging. Imagine, for example, therapies designed to restore epigenetic coherence in complex multifactorial conditions like neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. Instead of just managing symptoms, you'd be trying to address the subtle informational breakdown, the loss of field coherence that might underlie the disease process, potentially slowing or even reversing its progression.
This whole approach, It really promises potentially more effective and durable treatments by addressing the fundamental coherence, the underlying organizational pattern of your genetic and epigenetic systems, rather than just chasing isolated problems or symptoms. It suggests a future where medicine is truly holistic, recognizing the deep interconnectedness of all biological processes and targeting the underlying patterns that distinguish health from disease.
It's a shift from a fix the broken part model to a restore the systemic harmony model.
Okay, let's zoom out again. If our genes are potentially connected to the cosmos, as you mentioned earlier, and if life itself is driven by this principle of seeking coherence, then evolution itself takes on a whole new, maybe much grander meaning than we've typically understood.
Absolutely. It moves beyond the narrative of purely random changes and blind selection.
Yeah, it suggests something more purposeful, or at least more ordered, more guided by underlying principles.
Indeed. This framework fundamentally reframes evolutionary biology. Instead of focusing almost exclusively on random mutation, natural selection acting on individual genes or traits, it emphasizes systemic coherence in these guiding field dynamics as primary drivers of evolutionary change.
How would that change how we study evolution?
For one, it suggests modeling evolution through hologenes. Instead of just tracking changes in gene frequencies, the paper proposes modeling evolutionary processes as shifts or unfoldings within the potential encoded in the hologenic invariants. Adaptation, then, is seen primarily as occurring through field-level shifts in hologenes, the instructional software, which are influenced by environmental pressures but guided by the underlying blueprint.
So the environment triggers changes in the software, which then directs changes in the organism, all within the bounds set by the master blueprint.
That's a good summary of the idea. It implies that organisms might respond to environmental challenges in a more directed, intelligent way, drawing on the inherent potential within their hologene, rather than just waiting for a lucky random mutation to happen.
That's a very different picture of adaptation.
It is. This new perspective also allows for mapping adaptive pathways in a new light. We could study the evolution of coherogenes, those functional gene networks, to understand how the changing relational dynamics between genes drive the emergence of adaptive complexity over time.
Looking at how the teams evolve, not just the players.
Exactly. This could potentially offer better explanations for fascinating phenomena like convergent evolution, where completely different, unrelated organisms independently evolve very similar traits or functional networks to solve similar environmental problems. Think of how bats, birds, and insects all independently evolve wings for flight.
Right. Different starting points, similar solutions.
Metagenetics suggests this might happen not just by sheer chance hitting the same solution multiple times, but perhaps because there are shared underlying coherence principles embedded in the hologene that naturally guide evolution towards certain optimal, highly coherent solutions in different lineages facing similar pressures, like different architects all discovering the inherent stability of an arch.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. Does it offer any predictive power?
That's the hope. It opens the door to potentially predicting evolutionary outcomes with greater accuracy. By understanding these guiding field dynamics and how they respond to environmental inputs, we might be able to simulate possible evolutionary futures for species or ecosystems under different scenarios like climate change, pollution, or even perhaps long-term cosmic changes.
So modeling how climate change might reshape the genetic fields and coherogene relationships in key species.
Precisely. Which could allow us to predict which populations might be more resilient, which might be vulnerable, and perhaps even anticipate the kinds of adaptations we might expect to see emerge in different ecosystems as the planet changes.
This offers a potentially much more coherent, maybe even predictive understanding of how life adapts and diversifies. It definitely hints at a more intelligent, or at least depthly ordered and interconnected process behind the incredible tapestry of species on Earth.
It moves away from a purely chance-driven view of evolution, suggesting a deeper, inherent order that guides life's unfolding complexity, potentially even allowing us to forecast and maybe prepare for future adaptations in response to global environmental shifts.
A less random, more responsive view of life's journey, #tag 8.4 broader technological and scientific applications. The potential applications we've discussed in synthetic biology, medicine, and evolution are already mind-blowing. But the implications of this framework, if validated, probably don't stop there, do they? This feels like a foundational shift that could ripple outwards, sparking innovations and breakthroughs across countless other scientific and technological fields.
Absolutely. When you propose a fundamental shift in understanding how information and organization work in living systems, the potential applications become incredibly broad. Beyond those core areas, metagenetics opens doors to some truly futuristic possibilities.
Like what? Give us a taste of the really out there stuff.
Okay, well, consider AI-assisted gene network design. We could potentially develop highly sophisticated AI systems specifically trained to simulate hologene, and coherogene dynamics. These AIs wouldn't just be analyzing data, they could actively design optimal genetic networks for highly specific applications based on achieving maximum coherence and resilience.
So AI designing life forms based on these principles.
Essentially, yes. For example, AI tools could revolutionize agricultural genetic engineering. Imagine an AI designing a crop variety where the coherogens governing nutrient uptake, drought resistance, and pest defense are perfectly integrated, resulting in a plant that thrives with minimal inputs and maximum resilience. It's about designing for systemic optimization, guided by AI using these principles.
That could be huge for food security. What else?
Then there's the truly ambitious concept of metabiological coherence engines. We touched on this briefly. The idea of creating actual physical devices designed to actively restore symmetry and coherence in disrupted biological systems.
Devices that tune our biological fields.
That's the concept. These wouldn't necessarily be invasive. They might operate at the genetic level, the cellular level, or even the systemic level of the whole organism. Imagine portable or clinical devices that could emit specific energy fields, sound frequencies, or light patterns designed to interact with your hologene field, realigning it in real time to enhance healing, accelerate recovery from injury, optimize cognitive function, or even boost athletic performance by maximizing biological coherence.
This sounds like something straight out of Star Trek, a biofield tuner.
It definitely pushes the boundaries, but it's a logical extension of the framework. If fields organize biology, perhaps we can develop technology to modulate those fields for therapeutic benefit. And finally, consider biocosmic sensors.
Sensors linking biology and the cosmos.
Yes. If there's a real interaction between genetic fields and cosmic influences, as the framework proposes, then we could potentially design sophisticated sensors capable of measuring these interactions directly. Imagine wearable technology, maybe like a futuristic smartwatch. That doesn't just track your heart rate and steps, but monitors the coherent state of your entire genetic field in real time. And perhaps it correlates these readings with external factors like solar activity, geomagnetic conditions, or even specific planetary alignments based on those cosmic influence equations.
So it could tell me, warning, high solar flare activity detected. Your genetic field coherence is dropping. Maybe take it easy today or do some coherence building exercises.
Precisely. It could provide real-time insights into your health and energetic state, predicting how you might respond to environmental or cosmic shifts. This could lead to a completely new form of preventative health management, allowing you to proactively adjust your lifestyle, diet, or practices based on these subtle universal rhythms that might be influencing your biology.
Wow. From smarter, bio-inspired AI designing resilient crops, to non-invasive coherence engines for healing, to wearable sensors that connect our personal health to cosmic events. These are truly tangible, even if futuristic, cutting-edge technologies that could emerge directly from this framework.
If the foundational principles are validated, yes.
They could influence our lives in ways we can barely imagine right now, offering unprecedented understanding and maybe even influence over our health, our performance, and our fundamental interaction with the environment and the cosmos around us. It paints a picture of a future where technology works with the deep, coherent nature of life.
Okay, this has been an absolutely incredible deep dive. We've explored a framework that genuinely challenges so many fundamental assumptions about life, genetics, health, evolution, even our connection to the cosmos. It's exhilarating, mind-expanding stuff.
It certainly pushes the boundaries of current thought.
And it's a big but. Like any truly revolutionary idea, especially one that pushes so far beyond the edges of current mainstream understanding, it must face significant challenges, right? Hurdles on the path to wider acceptance, let alone practical implementation. This isn't going to be an easy road for metagenetics, is it? You're absolutely right. It's crucial to be realistic here. While the potential outlined is immense, the hurdles are equally considerable. This isn't just proposing a minor tweak to existing scientific models. It's advocating for a foundational reevaluation of biology and its connection to physics. And that kind of paradigm shift always comes with significant resistance and requires extraordinary evidence.
So what are the biggest obstacles? Where does the rubber meet the road in terms of proving any of this?
Well, first and foremost, perhaps the most critical challenge is validation. The absolute, undeniable need for rigorous testing and empirical evidence. This requires developing sophisticated computational models based on the proposed mathematics, and then crucially designing and executing clever biological experiments that can actually test the core predictions of the framework.
But how do you even measure something like the hologene or quantify hologene field dynamics in a living cell or organism? It sounds incredibly difficult.
It is monumentally difficult with current technology. That's a huge part of the validation challenge. Developing the entirely new measurement tools, the new experimental methodologies, the new technologies required to even begin probing these proposed subtle fields and their effects. We might need breakthroughs in biophysics and sensing technology that we haven't even conceived of yet.
So the very tools needed to prove it might not exist yet. That's a big hurdle.
It is. Which leads to the second major challenge, the sheer complexity. Implementing these field-based approaches, both experimentally and therapeutically, requires developing incredibly advanced tools and technologies capable of measuring and potentially manipulating these subtle hologenes, and coherogenes with precision. We're talking about technologies that are likely far beyond our current capabilities, demanding entirely new frontiers in instrumentation, bioimaging, complex systems data analysis, and maybe even a deeper understanding of the fundamental physics underlying biological systems.
It's not just doing a standard genetic test.
Not even close. Another significant challenge is collaboration. This framework, by its very nature, demands unprecedented levels of interdisciplinary collaboration. It requires bridging fields that traditionally operate in almost completely separate silos: molecular biology, genetics, quantum physics, field theory, information science, complex systems modeling, computer science, and, given its scope, potentially even philosophy and metaphysics.
Getting researchers from such diverse backgrounds with different languages and methodologies to speak a common conceptual language and work together effectively on this kind of grand unifying vision, that's a massive cultural challenge for science itself.
It really is. It requires breaking down long-standing disciplinary barriers and fostering a new level of open-mindedness and shared inquiry.
And I imagine there's also a significant psychological hurdle, right? Overcoming the inherent resistance from the established, traditional, more reductionist scientific paradigms must be a steep climb.
Absolutely. That's arguably the fourth major challenge: acceptance. Many, perhaps most, established scientists who have built their careers on the current gene-centric mechanistic models may be deeply uncomfortable with such a holistic, interconnected, field-based view, especially one that openly incorporates concepts that sound like or explicitly connect to ideas like a divine blueprint, scalar fields, or the influence of a zero-space vacuum potential.
It sounds too woo-woo for many scientists.
It can definitely sound that way if presented without the underlying mathematical and physical arguments. It requires a significant shift in worldview, a willingness to entertain possibilities that challenge deeply ingrained mechanistic assumptions about life. And historically, such paradigm shifts in science only happen gradually, often driven by younger generations, and usually require overwhelming, undeniable evidence that simply doesn't exist yet for metagenetics. It asks scientists to embrace a universe that might be far more intelligent, interconnected, and subtle than previously imagined.
Understanding these challenges, the need for validation, the immense complexity, the necessity of collaboration, and the struggle for acceptance really helps us appreciate the sheer magnitude of this intellectual undertaking. It's not a small step, it's aiming for a giant leap.
It truly is.
Yet, the potential rewards a truly unified understanding of life, health, consciousness, and our place in the universe make it an incredibly compelling and perhaps profoundly important frontier of knowledge to explore, even with all the obstacles. It feels like an invitation to a potentially new and exciting era of scientific discovery, pushing us to ask bigger questions.
It certainly represents a bold vision for the future of science. #Outchacro.
So as we kind of emerge from this incredibly deep dive today into the ontology of metagenetics, wow, we hope you've gained a genuinely new, maybe a more expansive perspective on what it might mean to be alive. We've journeyed far beyond the gene as just a solitary, static unit of code, exploring this radical idea of your genetic system as a dynamic, intelligent, and deeply interconnected field. A whole symphony of coherence operating across scales we barely imagined before.
We've seen how concepts like coherence and its sudden loss, what the framework calls catastrophe, and its equally sudden restoration, coherogenesis, might offer a powerful unifying lens. a way to understand patterns of order and disorder across all scales of existence, from the quantum fluctuations within your cells right up to the grand sweeping movements of galaxies.
Yeah, connecting the incredibly small to the incredibly large.
And perhaps most powerfully, we've touched upon how this framework makes a bold attempt to bridge cutting-edge, complex science with ancient philosophical and spiritual insights, suggesting there might be an inherent quantifiable divine blueprint, a fundamental pattern of coherence that underpins all life, potentially linking the material world we study with deeper, perhaps metaphysical, realities.
It leaves us with some profound questions to ponder, doesn't it? Like, what if your personal health, your day-to-day well-being, your individual evolution, maybe even the nature of your consciousness, what if it's all intrinsically connected to this universal intelligent blueprint? A blueprint that's constantly striving for harmony and order within you and around you.
hmm
What if your body isn't just a collection of parts working mechanistically, but a living, breathing reflection of cosmic design and coherence?
And if that's even partially true, what does it mean for you, personally? Not just to exist as a biological entity, but to potentially be an active, conscious participant in this incredible dance of cosmic coherence.
Wow.
What if you have the profound potential, maybe even the innate ability, to tap into the very essence of that universal design for healing, for growth, for resilience, and for a deeper, more profound understanding of yourself and the universe you inhabit?
Big questions indeed. We really encourage you to continue pondering these profound ideas. The journey into the deep mysteries of life, it seems, is really only just beginning. Thanks for diving deep with us today.